Hey everybody, Dave here. Welcome back. You know, it's around the middle of March right now, and the birds are singing, the stripers are running, and I'm itching to head to the shore. The only thing is, I need a beach cart. So instead of spending a ton of money on one, I'm going to build my own, and I'm going to show you just how I do it. So before we get started in the build, let's just talk about a couple of things. You might be thinking, why am I spending the time to go ahead and build my own when I can just buy one for around $99? Well, the thing of it is, I want to build one that fits my needs specifically. You know, the regular beach carts, the ones that have 4 wheels or 2 wheels with a standoff that you sort of pull around like a wagon, they're really great on open beaches. But if you want to fish places like sod banks and you have to go in and out of gullies or across tide channels where the tide's gone out and you're pulling through mud and stuff, they're not the best. So what I came up with was a single axle cart that is going to be able to go in and out of gullies. It's going to fit in a very small profile. It's going to allow me to stack my tackle and my cooler, and it's going to allow me to get into places where I think I can't get into with the other one. The other thing is, it's not made of PVC or aluminum that's either going to break or bend. It's going to be made of steel. But all the areas where any rust could penetrate, like inside a tube or things like that, is all going to be sealed up. So with a good coat of paint on it, I figure this is going to last me at least my lifetime, and my kids and grandkids will be able to enjoy it as well. So let's get into the build. It's a really simple design, and I'll walk you through the whole process step by step. So what I've got here is some of this heavy-duty tubing. It measures 7/8 inch outside diameter, and it's really strong. I get this at a local scrapyard. Actually, it's not local. It's about an hour from me, but it's worth the drive. But I only pay 45 cents a pound for steel like this, and so that makes this cart worth building. The other thing is that I don't need a ton of this to do this project, and it's going to be super strong, but it's going to be super simple, and I'll show you how we put it together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and this piece is about 5 feet long. I have another longer one outside, and this is the first one I'm going to bend. I'm going to cut this into 2 pieces 30 inches. And then I'm going to bend it at 1 foot, and whatever's left over, I'll decide if I'm going to trim that off a little later and see where my cooler sits on it. I also want a little space for like chairs and stuff, so we'll go and take a look at that. So anyway, this is the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to cut these off at 30 inches. Now, if you don't have a cut-off saw like this, and I realize most people don't, you can just use a grinder. You can buy a cheap grinder at Harbor Freight for like $10 and some cut-off wheels, and just do the same thing, or use a hacksaw or a reciprocating saw with a metal blade in it. Okay, with the 2 30-inch pieces out of the way, the next piece I'm going to cut off here is 94 inches. Okay, I've placed the tubing in my tube bender, and I've measured from the end of the tube up 11 inches, put a mark, and I've lined that up with the half mark on the die here. Now when I bend it, it'll be the measurement I want, and I'll duplicate that twice, and then we'll go to the main frame. Now I realize a lot of you do not have a tube bender, but you know, there are other ways you can utilize this. You could use a thinner wall tubing and use a conduit bender and heat it up and do it that way. So there's a lot of ways to get around this. So let's just bend this one, we'll bend the other one, and then we'll move on to the main handle. Okay, so I've got the first bend in at 90 degrees. Now we're going to come down a little bit and then bend it again back, and that's going to be my handle top right there. So what I want to do is I want this dimension outside here 13 inches from this outside of this pipe to where it bends the outside of the underpipe here. So the way I get that is this is approximately an inch, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the square on here, and I'm going to measure 12.5 inches. Alright, because when this bends down here, it's going to add another ½ inch length to my pipe. And so I'll just mark that off, and when I place it in the die here, this mark will line up with the edge of the die, which is half the pipe, and when I bend it I should have right around 13 inches. Doesn't have to be super precise, because I just want to make sure that I can fit all my different tackle boxes in there and none of them fall through the handle. So with that, let's bend it up. So once I've got it in the bender and tightened up slightly, so I can move this side up and down a little bit, what I do is I place a level across the two ends here and slide it back as far as I can and check the bubble in the middle, and it's right on level. That lets me know that they're on the same plane, so when I bend it, they're not going to be twisted like this, cattywampus. So I'll have a nice flat bend when I bend it that way. So one more bend, then we'll trim the ends for length and start putting everything together. So now that I've bent the handle up here and it's in a nice U shape, I've left it a little long deliberately, and now I'm going to cut this off right here. I'm going to transfer it across using a square, and I'll have it marked, and that way I know I've already checked the distance across and it's parallel, it's the same dimension, so I know that these rails are running parallel and square. So if I come across with a square here, I'll be able to just mark it and cut it off, and then we'll move on to the next steps. Alright, what I've done is I've taken a piece of scrap 1.5 angle iron and I've cut it off at 14 inches. That's going to be the base for our handle. Now I've got some 1.5 by 1/4 inch flat stock, and I'm going to cut that off as 14 inches as well. That's going to be the support for our outriggers, so it doesn't sink into sand or dirt or anything. So I have some 5/8 rod here I'm going to use for an axle, and I'm going to come in about 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to just use the hole punch. And put a punch mark in each one of these, and then I'll take it over the drill press and drill it through. This is for the cotter pin that's going to lock the wheels on. So before I can weld the axles onto the angle iron like this, I have to determine my length here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick a cotter pin through like that. I'm going to add a washer, and I've blown these wheels up so that they are as big as they're going to get. I don't want to put them on deflated, you know, and then when you put air in them, have them want to be bigger than you know, the space that we have allotted for them. So I put this one on this way with the tall part sticking there. Now I'm going to take this one, place it on this way, and I know this valve is going to be hidden, but it's just a matter if this one should lose some air over time. It's just a matter of taking the cotter pin off, sliding this wheel off, putting air in it, and putting it back together. I'm going to put that on like that, and I'm going to have these wheels touching. Now what I'm going to do is take one more washer, place that on here, and I'm going to put it on here, and just like that, Now I'm going to give it just a smidge of a space, not much, maybe a 1/16, and I'll place a mark right here. There we go. Now I know how big, how much I can put this axle on here to weld it up. And so while everything is on there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a couple of tack welds there, and then I'll disassemble everything. I like having the dual tires as opposed to a single tire in sand. And although I'm going to be using this in fresh water, getting down to lakes and stuff, it's going to make it a whole lot easier going through mud and sand. So I added the extra tire on, and I think it's going to do really well. So let me get this tacked on here, and I'll do the other side same way. I can weld it up, and then we'll move on to assembling the cart. So that's what the cotter pin looks like. You just be able to pull it out like that and put it in, bend it over. You may want to cut it off ahead of time before you assemble your wheels. I just took a grinder with a wafer wheel like this and just cut it off after I had it in there. But you know, it's up to you, whatever you'd like to do. So I've got this side tacked on now. I'll just disassemble it and we'll go over to the other side. Just another tip too, when you put your shaft in here, make sure the hole goes with the handle up and down, and put your cotter pin in from the top. That way if this ever gets bent straight, it'll still stay in there and it won't fall out. So now that I have the axles welded on, what I'm going to do is put the bottom support on, and that's going to go just like this. But in order to get the correct height, what I'm going to do is let this cool down, put the wheels back on, and then I'll be able to put these on knowing the right height. So what I did was I wound up taking about 1.5 inches off of this, so I'd just be about 1 inch above the wheels here, and then I used a magnetic square like this to hold the pipe in place, moving it up and down until I knew it was square. I put the support bar down here and set it on that so I'd have the right angle. I want this to be 90 degrees. Then I put a tack on there and squared it up this way using the square off of the angle iron and sighting it. And then I measured up, found 11.5-inch mark, came up 11.5, put a mark there, put that pipe on that mark, tack welded it, and then I measured across and across, make sure these were square this way. And then once that was in place, I tacked that in and tacked them down on this. Now it's just a matter of putting some supports in underneath here, which I'm going to add, and a few more things up top. And I've got some accessories I want to put on here. We'll take the wheels off and be ready for paint after I get it welded up. So I want to add some bracing under here in case I have some heavy coolers on top. I don't want everything on this one weld. So what I did was I took some 1/2-inch stock just like this, and I just held it up and just drew a line across, estimated the angle, and that's going to sit right underneath there like that. I will weld it here and I will weld it there. I'm going to make 2 of these identical. The good thing is when you make this and cut this in half, you have your angles already, so all you have to do is line them up, cut off the bottom here. Now I have 2, I'll place them in the position, weld them up, and that'll make this really strong. So I've got 2 pieces that I cut of 1.5 inch by 1/4 inch thick flat bar, and I put the one down here. I just tacked it. I used a 1/2-inch pipe for a spacer over here and here, and I'll tack that. Then the other one will go up here, right like that, as high up as I can get it on the bend, and that's going to be the mounting bracket for 4 rod holders across the front here. So let me get those tacked up, and I'm going to make those rod holders high, and you'll see why at the end of the project. So let me get these tacked up and we'll move on to the next set of accessories. So what we have now is we have the supports for the rod holders in the front, and I welded 2 6-inch long 1.5-inch pipes right here. They're going to be for carrying my sand spikes. I also added a cross brace right here, and the reason I did that is for a couple of reasons. It's going to hold my bait cutting station, and also a 5-gallon bucket underneath. I'm going to put a hook on the other side, and it also goes across, so if I carry my soft bag, it doesn't fall through the back, and it just helps support that. So now I'm going to add the hook to the back here. I'm going to add a couple of tie down hooks in different locations, and then we'll get ready to weld it up. Now that everything is put on here, all my brackets, my bracing, my holders, all the things that I want on here, now it's time to give it our coat of paint. And I'm going to be using this Rust-Oleum 2X, and I'm going to be putting on a satin, so it's not real bright and shiny in the sun when you're out on the beach, but it'll give it a nice finish. So let me give it a shot of that, and then we can start putting everything together. And then while this is drying, what we're going to do is move on to building the rod holders. So what I'm going to do to make the rod holders is I'm going to use some 2-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe. The reason I want to use 2-inch is because some of the handles I have are really wide at the bottom, especially like for my grandkids' poles. If we want to go to a lake or something, we can just drop them in. They have a little curve to the bottom, and they won't quite fit 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to move it up to 2-inch, and that'll be plenty big enough. I'm going to cut these off at 22 inches, and what I've done is I've placed the stop block right here so that I don't even have to measure, and I can just slide them down, cut them off. So let me start doing that right now. Now, if you don't have a miter saw like this, you can just use a hacksaw, a reciprocating saw, or whatever else you have to cut them. They cut fairly easy. So once I have the pieces of pipe cut to 22 inches, I'm just going to need a heat gun and a wine bottle like this. Is the one we had. Put a candle in it. You want something with a nice flare on it. And what I'm going to do is going to heat the pipe up and then push it down over the wine bottle. And that's going to give me a nice cupped flare for my rods to enter. Then I'm going to slot them on the router table, and I'll show you how that works. So let's heat this up. You want to be careful you don't burn it. You just want to get it nice and warm. So make sure you keep turning the pipe. Okay, that's been several minutes. Starting to get soft now. Place it on here, and we'll just flare it out. Just like that. So now they have the flare in the end of the pipe like this. And it's about a 1/4 inch profile from the side right here, about a 1/4 inch up from the main pipe. What I want to do is I want to put a slot in here now, and I want that slot in here in order to accept my reel stems. When I put my reels in here on the rod, I want the stem of the reel to go down in that slot and lock it in so it doesn't spin around or bang into the other reels, and they'll all be facing the same direction. Found the easiest way to do that is on the router table right here. And because this profile right here is about a 1/4 inch difference, what I did was I laid a piece of 1/4 inch plywood down on the bottom and one on the back. And now when I put this in here, that pipe stays flat and square to the side to that table. And now I have a 1/2 inch straight bit in here that I've centered on the pipe, and what I'm going to do is just going to run it through to this edge right here. That's what I made as a stop. Then I'll turn the pipe slightly and then just pull it straight back like this, and it should leave me a pretty perfect slot in my pipe. Now if you don't have this set up, this is the way I prefer to do it. You can do it with a jigsaw. Drill a hole first and then 2 lines and follow it with a jigsaw or Dremel tool, and that'll work as well. So let's do one of these, and I'll show you how it looks at the end. So now that I have this nice slot in here, what I want to do is I want to take off these sharp corners. I want to round them so that the reel stem finds its way into this slot a lot easier. And for that, I'm just going to use this belt sander. I'll just gently round those corners. If you don't have this, you can use a file, some coarse sandpaper, or whatever. But this just makes quick work of it. So now in this case, I'm going to mount these rod holders right here on these two rails. These rails are both 1.5 inches in width, so and they're parallel. So all I have to do is measure from the top of this one to the top of the other one to get the center of the rails, and that's 7 inches. So I can make my holes on the rod holders 7 inches, and then I can drill holes in the center of these, and that will be perfect. So let's jump over there, and we'll get started drilling the holes for mounting. So I know my dimensions center to center on those two support brackets are 7 inches. So I measured from the top of the one support, which is 1.5 inches, and I want this flush with the bottom of that bracket. So what I need to do is first come up, and I need to make sure that the slots are in line where I want to drill my holes. So I'm going to come up 3/4 of an inch right here, just like that. And now I need to come up 7 more inches from that. Place a mark here, across here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 1/2 inch spade bit, and I'm going to drill through here and through here. And I'll do that on the drill press. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure that this slot is completely at 12 o'clock, and then I'll make my holes right here. I want to drill all the way through and just put a mark in the bottom here with the spade bit. And then I'm going to be able to take a smaller bit, like a 5/16, and drill that through, and that's going to be where my bolt can pass through to mount to the rail. The reason you want a 1/2 inch bit up here, so you can get your screw gun bit down through there. If you make it the same size as the screw you're going to be using, or the machine bolt, then it's going to be difficult to get in there. So you make it a little bit bigger, and then you can go right through there. So now that I've got the rod holders all done, I've got them flared, I've got the slots cut, and what I've gone and done is I've sanded these down, and then I've hit them with a 2X Rust-Oleum paint that holds the plastic. I also used a Krylon paint for a base that holds the plastic as well. And so now what I'm going to do is mount these right here. The holes have already been drilled to mount to the rails here. And so I'm going to space them out evenly, just like this. I'm going to have 4 across here. So I know that to center this is 1.5 inches. I need to come up 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to come up 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to use my measuring device, and I'm going to place a mark across here approximately where these are going to go. Then I'm going to determine where they space from the length of this, and then I'll begin to mount these. I'm going to drill the bottom holes first and mount these this way. Then I can square them up off this bottom plate and drill through here just to leave a mark, move them out of the way, drill the hole, bring it back, and I know it'll line up perfectly that way. So let me get started marking along the bottom of this bottom rail. So what I've done is I've come in 2 inches from each end, and then I divide that by 3. What was left, there was about 16 inches left. I divide it by 3, and I came up with 5 and 5/16 spacing between here. So then I know that they'll be spaced evenly across here. Now what I'm going to do is take a center punch and line it up right on that hole, or on that mark, and that's where I'm going to drill my holes. And I'm going to use a bit that's just slightly larger than 1/4 inch. I'm using 1/4 bolts for this, and I'll probably go with a 5/16, so I have plenty of room. The reason I'm not tapping these is because they could rust in here and then be hard to get out. If I ever have to replace them, I just take a grinding wheel, cut off the backs, and everything will fall apart. I can replace the bolts anytime I want. And I'm not using stainless on this. I'm just using cheap zinc bolts because they'll work fine. And if they rust on here, it's still going to be strong enough to hold for years to come. So anyway, let me go ahead and drill these out, and I'll attach the bottoms first, then I'll line them up and drill through and connect the tops. You'll find it easier, I'm using like a 3/16 bit, you'll find it easier if you just drill a pilot hole first before you drill the 5/16. Before I attach these rod holders, I want to just make sure these holes are sealed up with paint as well, just to prevent rust stains from coming down. So what I got was some stop nuts. These are nylon lock washers. You put them on, you don't need any other like locking washers or anything. And I got some machine bolts. Now these are way long, they're 2 inch, but they were actually cheaper than buying the 1 inch, and I'll just cut them off. So what I've done is place the machine screw through the hole, and this one up here, I'll drop it down through the top, and then I'm going to use a long driver like this. That's why this hole in the front is larger. I'll put it on the machine screw, and I'll put a nut on from the back, holding it in place with a 7/16 wrench. Now that I have the first rod holder attached down on the lower screw, what I'm going to do is place the combination square against this bottom rail, and I'll just line it up to where it looks square to me, and that's right there. Now I'll take the drill with the 5/16 bit in, we'll go down through the top, and I just want to place a little mark on the metal mounting bracket. That's all I want to do. It's just so I know where to drill in the future. Now I can slide this out of the way, and there's my mark. Now I can center punch that and drill them just like the other ones, and I can follow this all the way along doing the same thing. So we're back inside in the shop for one final detail for the cart, and that's a bait cutting station. So what I wanted to do is make one that's easily detachable, and so this is what I came up with. Piece of 1 inch angle iron, piece of 1/4 inch round stock, and what I've done is I bent the round stock 90 degrees, and then I put a spacer in here like that and clamped it down and welded it up, so this will just slide in and out nice and easy. And on this side I'm going to put this bar across like that, and I have a cutting board I got from the dollar store. I'll put that on top, and it'll hook right on the cart. Let me show you how it works. So I have this piece of flat stock across there I use with my bucket hook, and also to prevent my soft tackle box from falling through the back. And the bait cutter that I made, the holder, just hooks right on there like that. What I'm going to do is place this flat stock right here across it, and then I have a cutting board that'll go on top. I wanted it so I could easily take it off, take it down, wash it off in the lake, drop it in my bucket, head on home. Okay, with our cart all done and everything loaded, let me give you a quick tour and show you why I designed it the way I did. Now you notice first off we have 4 rod holders right here. They're 22 inches high. And the reason I made them that high is so that I could have a space between my cooler and the rod holders, and that way I could put in my fish measurer, my chairs. If I wanted to bring a canopy or anything else like that, I could. Then what I've done is I've run a bungee cord down here to the lower connection, and that comes up, goes over the top of my cooler and around the back to that hook support that I have right there, so that I can hook on the bungee to hold the cooler in place. You can see there's plenty of clearance for the wheels. Then what I've also done is I've put on these tie downs, and I've run a strap around my tackle box, whether it's soft or hard, and that connects to the other side right here. Now you notice I have dual wheels on this, and the reason for that is ease of going over sand. If I had one wheel on here, it could stick in the sand, and with the two wheels, it just gives that extra comfort. On here I have my cutting board that I showed you how I built, and that just comes on and off real easy like that. It's just that simple. Goes on here, drops in. I can cut. My knife is right here, my $3 Walmart bait knife, and underneath here is room for a 5-gallon bucket. I put in a hook for that, or a 2-gallon bucket like this, and I can carry my cast net. So if I'm fishing on a pier or at a lake and bait comes in close to shore, I can catch some of my own. I put this support bracket across here, so when my soft tackle box is on there, it can't fall through. Now on the sides here, what I've done is I've taken 1.5 inch pipe, I've cut it 6 inches long, and I mounted it at a 45-degree angle, so that you can see the face of this is behind this, because I didn't want anything here hitting that. And now what I can do is drop my rod holders in there. I have one on this side and one on this side. Now the other reason I mounted the rod holders in the front here like this is so that when I would tip it back towards this way, like this, I put my foot down the bottom and tilt it back, they don't have any reason to hit my head. They're out far enough away where, you know, as I'm walking along, they're a good foot or so above my head and I don't get whacked. The other thing is I can turn this towards the lake or wherever I'm fishing, and if I don't want to set up the rod holders, I want to do like a run and gun system, I can just drop my rods right in the holders and use them right in position on the cart. So there's a walk around, and I hope you got some good tips from this. I really like this design I came up with. I think it's going to serve me well in the future, and I hope it serves you well also. Everyone, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. Really appreciate it. I hope that video was helpful to you. I hope that you got some ideas out of it in crafting your own cart, and I hope it'll be a blessing to you this coming fishing season. You know, if you like our content, I would really encourage you to take the time and just subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell as well so you'll be up to date on all the videos as soon as they come out, and we've got a lot more hopefully coming your way. You know, I'd just like to leave you with a thought of the week, and this week I'd like to just share with you this. You know, if I would ask you what major sin keeps you and I from heaven and from knowing God, I'd get a lot of answers. But for me, I think the number one sin of all is pride. If you ever look at the word pride, the one letter that's right smack dab in the middle is I. It's all about us, isn't it? And you know, pride is the one thing that keeps us from having a relationship with God. And the fact that, you know, just like building that cart, I mean, I could have said, you know, I can carry this stuff and I can haul it around and I can make a bunch of trips and I can do all this, but why? Why? When I understood my need for the cart, I was able to invest in one, and I knew that it was going to be a blessing to me. You know, the same way with God. God stands in the wings and he holds his arms out for us, and he wants so much for you and I to have a relationship with him. But pride is the one thing that keeps us from knowing God. If we look at ourselves, for most of us, we'd say, I'm a good person. I don't need, you know, God in my life. I know I'm going to heaven. I don't need Jesus and all that other stuff. But the fact of it is, those standards that we measure our goodness by are our own, not God's. And each one of us, when we humble ourselves before God, when we come to Him, He not only has the ability to forgive us of our sins, but change our life forever. Let me just share this one verse with you. It's found in Psalm 138, verse 6, and it says this: "Though the Lord is on high, He looks upon the lowly, but the proud He knows from afar." You see, the whole reason God knows those that are prideful from afar is because in our own arrogance, we refuse to come close to Him. We think we can do everything ourselves and that we can live our own life the way we choose and it'll turn out for the best. But you know what? When we do that, I really believe that we exchange God's goodness for a counterfeit. A false belief that, you know what? We're in charge of our own destiny. Yet God is the one who gives us life every day, doesn't He? I just want to encourage you to take the time to move towards a relationship with God. And if you're not sure how to do that, I'd really encourage you to check out my book called Growing Deep. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's in the description below. And all you have to do is click on it and read. It doesn't require your email or any other thing to capture. But it's my gift to you that you might know the joy that I know in a relationship with God and Jesus Christ. And, if you're at a point in your life where you've been seeking and looking for fulfillment, but haven't had that in your life, maybe it's time that you start looking towards God, because I know for me, He's been the essence of my life, and He's blessed me in so many ways, and He could do the same for you. So, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Really appreciate it. And until next time, remember, God loves you more than you could know. So remember, get outdoors, and God bless.